I'm not going to waste time starting off this video and say that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is truly something special. It's a masterpiece. It's completely blown me away and has become my latest obsession for the last 7 days. It has invoked so many feelings and emotions from me to the point where I've actually cried real man tears playing this game. And to think a small studio of around 30 people has come out of nowhere to produce this type of game gives me so much hope for the future of games. It's staggering. It's going to be one of my Games of the Year contenders, if not my #1 pick, as it's certainly there right now. Rather than allude to my verdict at the end of the video, I want to sit and tell you to go and play this game. Even if you dislike turn-based games, this game will be something for you to enjoy, as it's innovative and transformative for the genre. The reason I'm saying this right out of the gate is because much of this game is hard to talk about without mentioning key areas of the game, the story being the biggest one in particular. So it's easy to kind of spoil the experience, and it's such a phenomenal experience that I don't want to do that. So that's why all of the story footage in this video is going to be seen from Act 1 of the game. The reason I say all of this, and for this review in particular, is simply to talk about the game and why I love it so much, to get into some of the finer details rather than waiting till the end of the video to give you my final verdict. So I'm telling you right now, go and play Expedition 33. It's on Game Pass, it's on available platforms for about $50, and I think you should go and check it out. And subscribe to the channel, and hopefully come back to this video and all of my future content. If you do plan to watch this all the way through, please use the timestamps below to skip past the story portion if you don't want to know anything about that and just want to know about the gameplay, or watch it all. It's entirely up to you, and help a YouTuber out with his watch time. With all that being said, let's talk about my experience with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. The best place to begin with Expedition 33 is the story, of course. The concept of the game already had me intrigued before even setting foot in the game. Every year, the Paintress has been counting down for the past 67 years and wiping people away from the age that is on the number, and they become gommaged. Every year, an expedition launches out to try and stop the Paintress, and so far, every year they have failed. This is where the game begins. The opening hour of this game sets the scene for the entire adventure. It's not only an introduction to the world and the city of Lumiere, but it reveals the severity and reality of the world that these people live in year over year. We see Gustav reminiscing over Sophie as they share their final moments together in this first hour, and there is also an acceptance of what is to come, and they embrace it. After going through the tutorial section and then ultimately witnessing such a heartbreaking scene, we are pulled into the world. You are buying into the world, into the characters, and it's only an hour into the game. After this first hour, the game only goes from strength to strength, which is remarkable to me. The reason the story is so good is because it hits on some incredibly deep themes, and it does it in a captivating way. There is a great deal of despair on the journey ahead if they're going to be good enough to complete the task, but with a great deal of hope as well, because the main motto of the expeditioners is for those who come after. So it's not necessarily if they fail, it's preparing and helping the people that come after them. The story is filled with so many triumphant moments, mixed with gut-wrenching moments, mixed with joy and happiness. And sometimes there is also the right amount of silliness here. Just wait until you meet Eskia or even the Jestrels, because these guys are honestly one of my highlights of the game. Every character has their moment to shine and become a vital part of the narrative, and I actively wanted to learn more about them at the camp, and you can do so by engaging with conversations of them and improving your relationship as a mechanic in the game, but it really uncovers their history and it uncovers their motivations and why they decide to be expeditioners. But all of that would be for naught without the phenomenal performances from every single member of the voice cast. Charlie Cox of Daredevil fame does an awesome job as Gustav. Mael is played by Jennifer English, who, if you don't remember, she was Shadowheart in Baldur's Gate. Ben Starr absolutely kills it as Verso in this game and might be one of my favourite performances of the year. Lune is played by Kirsty Ryder. Ciel is played by Charlotte Nix. Monoko is played by Rich Keeble, and even Andy Serkis is here and plays a vital part in the later half of this game. They gave stellar performances, and I guarantee at least 2 of these people in this cast are going to be nominated for the Performance of the Year at the Game Awards, and it's a standout. Having a great story is one thing, but performing it and making it stand out, feeling connected to these characters so deeply is vital, and they killed it. It also feels very movie-like because of the cinematography of all of the cutscenes. There are a lot of slow pans around the group, close-ups on faces, massive wide shots that take in the spectacle before you. They do a really cool thing with aspect ratio multiple times throughout the game, and it is awesome. Pair that with an absolutely outstanding musical score. Like, it's illegal for the soundtrack to be this emotionally impactful and awesome at the same time. They go into these crazy operatic sequences, then you go into a crazy battle theme that is vastly different, and if you want to check it out, it's got over 140 tracks on Spotify, and I've been listening to it all the time during this video. Everything that Sandfall has tried to achieve with its narrative here has certainly been met and blown into the stratosphere. You feel and become connected to this story, so much so it had me enthralled from the start all the way until the finish, and even to the point of tears multiple times. It's a beautifully made narrative masterpiece. The second, or arguably the first biggest selling point for me of Expedition 33 is the combat. When you mention the word turn-based RPG, it can be a complete turn-off for many people. That would be the case for any other game, but Expedition 33 is the exception. In any traditional turn-based game, there is a back and forth, leaving most of the game up to chance and kind of having to put the controller down when you are playing. Expedition 33 takes this tested formula and merges it with an action combat system. These elements include dodging, parrying, and jumping out of the way of attacks. What it does is turn a pretty basic system into an intricate dance of parrying, dodging, counterattacking, which feels really satisfying when you nail it, and often is one of the best ways to deal massive damage in the game. Dodging is just the same as parrying, it's just got a slightly larger window for error, but still feels just as good as parrying. Jumping gets added to the game later, which adds another level to combat. Gradient attacks and parries are added much later into the game, but once again, they add another layer. When you implement action elements into a solid turn-based system already, it gives the player more agency in the outcome of a fight. I adore this because in so many RPGs I've played in the past, it doesn't matter how much you spec out your character or prepare for a fight. If there's one attack that is unavoidable, you will have to take it. But now you no longer have to sit there and take 7 hits from the boss. You can learn the attack patterns. You can enjoy the part of this dance that I talk about and do massive damage in return and feel awesome when you do it. During my playtime and also looking at things into the game, I found out that one of the inspirations behind the system was Sekiro, as because one of the members of the development team had spent a large amount of time playing that game and the influence has shown. And it's there in Expedition 33 because it feels satisfying when you parry everything and then go into this massive group pirouette for a counterattack. It sounds super blown out, but I do think this is a truly innovative take on the genre, and I don't know how I can go back to another turn-based game after this. Pacing and structure can be an issue for many games, but man, did they get it right here. Most of the game you will follow these smaller, more semi-linear areas moving forward where you will find collectibles or resources or upgrades for the party, but then it moves into this open overworld. I love this a lot because it reminds me a lot of the old school RPGs from the early PlayStation days. This also opens up a lot more when you unlock swimming and flying with Escape, and exploring the whole map to find secrets or exploring all of the optional areas to grind up things. I never felt like it dragged or it was boring. When I actually look at my time spent in the game, I had around about 52 hours total, which is kind of staggering for an RPG of this nature because you're usually pushing into the 80, 90 or 100 hour region. I also loved exploring these areas because there's a lot of world bosses or chromatic versions of previous enemies that you've faced spread throughout these optional areas. And they aren't just stronger versions, they have variations to their attacks or slightly different timings to their attack strings. Subtle, but enough to make revisiting the fights good. When you factor in all of the time you've spent learning and mastering the combat system, these fights are awesome. They're 100% challenging, but you can 100% over level when you get into the deep portions of Act 3. And when you dive really deep into the RPG elements as well, you can slap bosses up easily. I did over level for the final portion of the game, so that is a pre-warning. There are so many things to do once the world opens up, and I wanted to experience it all, which is why I kind of wiped the floor with the end portion of the game, and I would be interested to check this out on New Game Plus to see how much harder it is. Did this dampen the experience overall, being over leveled? Absolutely not, because I was engaged in the story. Here's the thing. Not only does the combat system feel awesome, enemies that feel rewarding to fight, the structure is on point. I haven't even talked about each character themselves in terms of how they play and how much depth this RPG actually has. Firstly, each of the 6 characters play into the core system of combat. They all have AP that they use for special attacks, base attacks that generate AP, and the ability to free aim shots to hit weak points on enemies. Besides base attacks, outside of that core system, each of them has their own mechanics and gameplay loop to master within the overall combat itself. Gustav needs to generate lightning charges to unleash his AoE lightning, so focus on getting as many hits as possible with him is key. Mael is focused on switching stances between a defensive stance for less damage taken, offense which deals more damage, and then virtuous which deals 200% more damage. Lune has elemental stains, which if you use them correctly with the corresponding skills, it will consume them, thus empowering her further. Ciel is quite challenging, but uses sun attacks to generate charges and applies foretells on an enemy, and then following up with moon charges, which is skills that consume that foretell. You'll deal more damage depending on how many stacks you have on a character. Consuming both of the charges will put her in a twilight state, which increases the loop of her damage much further. Minoko is one of the characters I played with the least, but has a really cool mask system, which depending on which mask is active, it will enhance certain skills, and they can unlock more skills as you beat enemies, allowing them to turn into different Nevrons. But by far and away, my favourite character is Verso. Their mechanic builds up perfection from rank D all the way to S. Each of the ranks has more sub-effects for being there, such as doing more damage or things costing less AP, and you kind of get into this loop by avoiding damage and parrying a lot because it builds up perfection whilst also doing damage as well, and it fits right into a gameplay loop. I love his playstyle so much because it feels like an anime character all the time, and Phantom Zero is one of the higher level attacks that he has, which cuts across the entire screen and cuts all the enemies. And he just has the sauce. He's just so cool. Learning each character is important, but the depth in the game comes from being able to play these characters completely differently at all times. You can go all out damage with Verso or make him more of a support class. Go all out with Ciel or make her into a support like I did. The synergies between your team is just as important as each individual. I love their flashy effects that you get for each character. I love how they synergize together with certain counter-attacks. I also love how no matter what the setup is for each character, it feels like an important member of the party. It meant that as much as I wanted to use all of them, I had to make the tough choice on who suited what encounter and have people out, but I would constantly be rotating my party, and it was something I did quite frequently. But it goes much deeper than this. When you factor in your weapons, Pictos and Luminas, it really starts to get the mind going for the potential builds and stat upgrades that you can have for each character. Weapons open up different playstyles, with some of the later weapons being really important for final builds. For example, Mael has a weapon that makes her start in virtuous stance, meaning you can hit hard right off the first turn, and this is just one of 10 to 15 per character. Weapons can be upgraded, finding resources in the world, and scale with your stats, and funny enough, the max level of them is actually level 33, which I quite liked. But the RPG elements of this game really come into their own when you talk about the Picto system. Simply break it down, Pictos are passive effects and stat boosts for each character. You can equip 3 at any time, and they have effects ranging from 1 AP per enemy killed, or playing twice in one turn, or starting off a battle with 1 extra AP, recovering health, these types of things. Pictos have these stat boosts such as defense, speed, crit rate, health, and are also important for how a character performs. Using CL, for example, I wanted to make her go first so she could amplify the rest of my party with buffs and AP, so maxing out her speed was key. Speed determines the order of the party, so if you don't want to get stumped on the first turn, you would build into it. Pictos can be upgraded as you do a couple of battles, and then as you get into the later portions of the game, they will randomly be leveled up and get even more stat boosts. But upon leveling them up from doing a couple of battles, you will unlock them as a Lumina. Lumina are passive points that you can use to take Pictos' passive effects and apply them to your character. Take, for example, the Cheetah Picto, which allows you to play twice in a row. Once you've leveled that up, as long as you have 40 Lumina points, you can then equip that to all of the other characters without actually having to have the Picto on your character itself. Using Luminas to cater each individual party member to your own particular playstyle is what makes this game so fun and gives it a lot of depth. I spent at least 2 or 3 hours respecking characters and adjusting the Luminas and Pictos to see what fit for me, and ultimately setting up my party to do as much damage as I possibly could. There are so many builds and directions that you can go into that I haven't even tried. Maybe I'll play New Game Plus and try even more things out there, and I've heard that you can get upwards in the region of 1 billion damage with one of them, and the highest hit that I had was with Mayhal, and I did something like 38 million in one singular hit. The freedom to chop and change these is why the build crafting elements in Expedition 33 are so good. Your skills, your weapons, your Pictos, your stats, your passives, all merge together with the combat system to have a massive, gratifying payoff. I love all of it. What Sandfall has created here for me is transformative for the genre. It's innovated on key pain points that I've had for years. Combat was never boring, and the build crafting never got stale or dragged. It was thoroughly engaging from minute 1 to hour 52. I could sit here and list off all of the describing words that I know to talk about Expedition 33 when it comes to its art design and the visuals, but I just don't have enough. Vibrant, beautiful, stunning, serene, dark, depressing, expressive. I could just keep going on and on. The thing I've circled back on during my time when playing the game, and the most common theme of the game, is that this feels like a painting. Every new environment looks and feels like I'm stepping into a new canvas. The painting changes in every single area of the game. One minute we are in an underwater haven with enemies that match that aesthetic. The next we are in a grand operatic coliseum with the enemies matching the aesthetic once again. I often felt small with how grand certain sections of the game were, and it was just a constant smack in the face of wonder. I keep asking myself how they've pulled this off and how it runs so smoothly in the process, because it was just great to look at, and every fiber, every pixel of this game has been poured over in some way or another, and the art is no different. I spoke a lot about the combat, but it's all made the sweeter with how great visually this game feels. Nothing seems out of place. None of the enemy designs are out of place. All of the abilities and the effects look and feel spectacular. The same sauce that they were cooking with when it came to the combat and the story and the RPG elements is the same sauce here with how the game looks and feels. You can have a great story, you can have good combat, but if you don't feel immersed in the world, then I think it becomes harder to connect with. And I felt that here. The connection was stronger than ever. It doesn't rely on just one aesthetic to stand out. It uses many, making for a much stronger journey throughout the game and a much deeper level of immersion. What's a chef kiss to all of this is how it performs technically. It held pretty high frame rates on high settings on PC, and not only did I experience no drops or stutters during my time of play, it was buttery smooth during my entire playthrough, especially in the combat sections and navigating the open world. And I don't understand what wizardry they pulled off to get this to work. The only real time I had issues with performance was during cutscenes where there would be a slight stutter because all of the cutscenes are rendered in engine. So if there's a lot of things going on the screen at once, or there's a quick camera angle change, you would run into a tiny little bit of a stutter and then it would pick back up again. There's also a really bad problem with Unreal Engine 5, which this game is in, which causes the game to crash after a certain period. It's just how it interacts with your PC, and it's just a problem that Unreal has. Every other small nitpick that I have about the game here and there ultimately doesn't really matter because it doesn't ruin the entire experience for me. It's just in my nature to be able to pick up on a couple of these little things. Expedition 33 is such a special experience that only comes around every couple of years, and it feels so much sweeter being that the size of the studio and the history of a few of their developers. Sandfall is only composed of 33 people, some of which have worked previously at Ubisoft, and this smaller scale team has produced this as their first game, a monumental feat that takes some studios years to achieve. There are so many lessons that can be learned from this game. You don't need hundreds of people working on a game which balloons the budget. You don't need to force over monetization into every aspect of your game to sell it. These are talented developers, and there's talented developers across the entire industry, but they're not being utilized by AAA publishers. And this game is proving that you have that in spades. It also goes to show that if you give freedom, all that matters is that you make a good game and it will sell and it will be played and people will enjoy it. After just 3 days, it sold 1 million copies and had over 120,000 players on Steam at its peak, and shot up to the highest user rated score ever on Metacritic, making it the highest rated game of all time. And I think having a smaller studio means less hoops that you have to jump through to make something happen in the game. It doesn't mean that you have to skyrocket the budget of the game. It allows for more focused creativity and ultimately a better outcome. But maybe this is just an outlier. I don't really know. My hope is that this shakes up the industry enough to realize we can scale back. We don't need these massive teams on the project because ultimately it could make a worse product. We can make a better game with smaller teams, take more risks on more IPs, and embrace their creativity. Expedition 33 is a masterpiece and has cemented itself in my top 5 games of all time. And I'm not just saying that out of recency bias. And after some time, I think it might be number 1. It deserves Game of the Year, and I'm hopeful that it does win at the end of the year, and it deserves all the awards and praise it's getting. I could talk about it for hours about every little detail, but for the sake of the video, it's time for my last final verdict. Expedition 33 is a must play from me, and if you're going to play one game all year, then definitely play this one. Thank you very much for watching the video. Kind of a mixture on how I usually do my reviews. I do want to thank Guillotine and Sandfall for sending me over a code to be able to play this a day or so early to get started on this video. And sorry that it's taken a little bit longer to come out. But overall, I had a great time, and if this video has been helpful and informative, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, stay tuned for more content. But as always, this has been Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.